Welcome to Newsflash 26th of June, and as you can see, I upgraded slightly. There's a LED backlight on the right and on the left. I feel like a real YouTuber now, because you're only a real YouTuber if you have the blurry background LED flashes. Otherwise, what we were talking about today is some news that really appeared here. For example, in Germany, there was like a talk. The Berlin mayor was talking to what apparently looked like the mayor of Kiev in Ukraine, but wasn't. It turned out it was a DeepFake guy that just called the mayor of Berlin, looked exactly like Vitaly Klitschko, which is, I think, the mayor of Kiev right now, but wasn't. And that shows how scary this is, because they were talking for 15 minutes already until they noticed that there's something wrong. And they didn't notice it because of the face had some glitches or something like this, but because it was of the questions that the mayor of Kiev was asking the mayor of Berlin, which is super, super awkward and yeah, very, very interesting, because if deepfakes, live deepfakes in this case, can get so realistic, that gets really, really scary if you don't notice this. I noticed that the mayor of Kiev usually is not very expressive with his face, so this might be also one thing that was not taken into account, or has to be taken into account when it comes to how good are those deepfakes. Because if someone is talking like me here with my hands all over the place, some people would call me Italian, then of course this is something that would distract this deepfake tremendously. But if you just talking like this, don't move so much, then of course this would be pretty easy for deepfake to put another face on you. And yeah, this is one of the interesting things that really happened, and it shows how scary this technology can be. Because just think for a second, and this was, I think, the first things that also came to mind when I first heard about deepfake being so widely available for people. Imagine that just one of those, like Vladimir Putin, Joe Biden, or someone else just declares war on someone, or declares we will send nukes to you, to your country in a few hours. How would you react? That's the big, big question. So it gets really, really scary, and you have to look out in the internet, on the internet, for deepfakes. More and more deepfakes with this technology become more and more widely available for people to use. And now even in live chats, so realistically that you, for the first 15 minutes, cannot distinguish what's going on, cannot distinguish between, yeah, is it real or is it fake? Then it's really, really getting scary. And getting to a point where, yeah, I have to warn you, basically. So enough of this, let's talk about a little bit of phone and technology stuff that is, I think, something more for consumers. Just like, for example, the Nothing Phone 1, which is nothing currently, I would say. At least there's some renders that appeared, and there's some demos appearing, and there's also some leaks appearing from the developers itself that developed this, describing the unique design and so on. The only interesting thing that I see right now is the gimmick. It's like a back of a phone, just like take this back of a phone, and it has some LED lights and stripes that can move around in patterns, can light up certain things in patterns, can show you with an LED light as battery, acting as a battery indicator, how much your phone is charged. And you have some light patterns that help you to see when someone is calling, who is calling, which is all like a throwback to a few years in the 90s, where we had flip phones and so on that had LED lights, and that had also some had color LED lights, where you can see, I remember Blackberries, for example, you could set a color for each one calling, so you had like a different color for your parents calling or your work calling, and you immediately knew then who's calling. But we have moved from this, we have moved for OLED screens, because we usually see when our phone is lying on the back who's calling. But if you're lying it on a screen, then of course you can see the pattern and then remember, oh, okay, that's probably XYZ calling. Is it really useful? I don't know. I think it's a gimmick. It's interesting that they are re-implementing this, because I think the technology in itself is a nice gimmick, because it can be very useful and it can be very unique in certain ways. I remember all the good phones that I saw in Japan once, that I never went to Japan, but I saw them in Japan in a video clip or so, how they were like blinking in this case. They were very unique designs. This was when phones were still fun, Mr. Fischer? When phones were still fun, they had like all this weird different designs, and now they're all like a slab of glass on the back and on the front, maybe plastic and an aluminium frame or something like this, and that's it basically. But yeah, they're distinguishing themselves with this LED pattern, but is there more to it? We got some leaks that indicate a little bit, or that show that this might be not the fastest processor inside of this Nothing Phone 1. That might be, has two implications to it. One of first could be, it's getting cheap. It will be a mid-range phone, affordable for everyone to get, which is like a noble goal, I would say. And I think also, when OnePlus, Carl Pei, who started OnePlus, is also now the founder of Nothing Phone, or Nothing, and heavily involved in the Nothing Phone development. When he started with OnePlus, this was also like the flagship killer. So mid-range price, but you get the power of like a real flagship. And it is true that our now modern phones, I have an Honor 50 here, a Nova 9 for example, with a Snapdragon 778, they come very close to the power of a flagship. Of course, the flagship will always beat it in this high CPU demanding tasks, but on the long run, the 778, for example, doesn't have this like fall down to a performance level that is mediocre just because, for the price that you pay, because it's just, not powerful enough to sustain this power. It is not powerful enough in heat dissipation, so that it can not run this constantly. What phones do, Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 for example, or the 888 that I'm using here in my Xperia Pro I, they start very, very high, but then they fall off because they cannot take this heat, and they have to fall off a little bit and come very close to the level of the 778, for example, that the 778 can hold constantly, where the 888, for example, cannot and falls down. So this is one thing where I think mid-range phones make a lot of sense, and could be the reason why Nothing Phone is going this direction. The other thing could be because it is cheaper, definitely cheaper to include it, and then making a phone for masses would be very interesting. But it contradicts somehow the way they do the planning. For example, what they do now, what they plan to do is have an invitation. I think the last time I heard about it was also OnePlus, this crazy idea of you have to have an invitation to get a phone, to buy a phone, because they are basically creating them in batches. Of course they're creating them in batches, but they're not waiting until they have enough what they think they can sell. They just, okay, we have our first batch, let's sell it directly to some people who want to eagerly try it out. So the first batch. I always have a little bit of problems with this, because I know this from other companies who did this in the past, and they did this in the past because they had like batches. They first sold those batches and then turned out to be like bad design flaws in those batches, and then they fixed those batches and created new batches without this design flaws. And so all the people that came afterwards, that got the second, third or fourth batch of their smartphone or tablet or whatever, got the more improved version, the version that doesn't have this hardware bugs or design flaws. And this is something that I see here as well, and I see the thinking that could go into this. This is why also probably they make the phone a little bit cheaper, because they're not doing so much, they put not so much effort in, or maybe they cannot put so much effort into testing and redesigning, and which will take years, of course, to get to a point where you can release such a phone, especially a phone which is not just a slab, which has some different functionality in there, which has some different kind of technologies, which tries something differently. And this is something that I see here right now. What do you think about the Nothing Phone? Nothing Phone 1? I don't see so much of innovation in there, I have to say. It's a nice gimmick, and for the right price, let's say under 500 euros, if you only get a Snapdragon 778, I would say 400 euros would be okay, plus the gimmicks. You'll be paying 100 euros more for the gimmicks. If you get a Snapdragon, 7 Gen 1, which is like the successor of the 778, I would say, okay, this might be a fair price, but we have to say testing. Does it also overheat? Does it keep the performance per power, per heat as well? Can it work without overheating? How's the performance with cameras and so on? We don't know anything about this. We know they have 2 cameras on the back. We don't know if it's, I personally think it might be a high resolution camera as a main sensor and an ultra wide angle, which is low resolution. I just personally expect like a typical 8 megapixel ultra wide angle, which might be a little bit better than the other ones from the mid-range. But this is what I expect personally. And then we have maybe a 64, maybe 50, 48 megapixel main camera sensor with a little bit of larger sensor size. Maybe they put a 108 megapixel sensor inside a normal Samsung one that we see in so many Xiaomi devices for 200 euros already, or 300 euros. I don't know. So I don't see the interesting part about the Nothing Phone 1. The hype is there, definitely. And they created this hype and they are teasing all these LEDs on the back, but it's a gimmick. In the end of the day, it's a gimmick. It will not change the world forever. What could change it would be the price. Like if it would only cost 350 euros, 400 euros, and has flagship kind of capabilities, maybe not the flagship processor, but the pictures look good, the photos look good, stereo speakers, good haptic engine, good software as well. The software experience is also very interesting, because I have the feeling from what I saw that it will be like a stock Android-like software, nothing like Oxygen OS, for example, was for OnePlus for a long time, where you have lots and lots of customizabilities and changes that you can do to personalize your phone. So that's this. So this is what I see with the Nothing Phone. And the last but not least, because I see the overheating icon on the Xperia Pro I is talking about the overheating on the Xperia 1 Mark IV. Apparently it's very bad. Lots and lots of people are reporting about it, especially also on YouTube, those who got the device. Mine shipping date got deleted. I hope I get it next week, but we will have to see. So it's overheating, it's so bad that some people are sending it back. So I hope Sony can address this very, very quickly with the software update, even if they like limit the processor power, but they have to make it not overheat when taking photos even outside in 25 degrees Celsius. No, just simply no. Even 30 degrees Celsius is not something that is completely out of thin air that I take here. It is something normal temperature nowadays in Europe. So what do you think about this overheating? It's a bit of a problem. Talking about a little bit about videos that I will make, still have the videos to make about the Xperia XE2 camera stuff that will come out, a camera review. The iPhone XS camera review will come out, comparison probably as well. IEM's reviews, Moondrop, I have many of them, even True Wireless of them, that I will check out and do a review about it. That's basically everything. Hope you enjoyed this video. Click the like button, subscribe if you want to know more. That's everything. Until the next time. Bye.